so now we're being recorded, so you say can and will be used against you. All right, so today we have quizzes to get back. This is where we're at with everything. Everybody knows that. You're probably tired of seeing this. So today I want to return to quizzes. We're going to go through the rubric for the article summary and the interview observation paper just one more time, make sure everybody's good before we're at there. We'll talk about a little bit more on instructional variables, building self-esteem and motivation. Okay. So, you'll see at the top of your paper where I gave everybody a half point back, because everyone has a similar answer for the RTI process. And because everybody had kind of the same answer, that wasn't what I was looking for, I gave that point back to you. Okay? So overall, I'm rated fine. But when you get to your final, you will need to know the actual names of the 3 tiers. Not that just that it's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. There are names for the 3 tiers. Benchmark, strategic, intensive. Okay? So BS, benchmark, strategic, intensive. All right? That is going to be important. Okay? So, questions on that? I just know that when we went through RTI, I must not have used the names enough for that to transfer over to your knowledge base and long-term memory. So, just make a note off to the side on your own papers, because I will take the quizzes back, that you want to know the 3 names. If you go back to the slides, on responsive intervention, the names are right in there. Okay? Other questions that you, sorry, I should have maybe given these back. Any other questions on the quiz? Good. All right. Thank you. But again, for having kind of some start and stop between all of them, I think you guys did very well. Okay, so I'm going to pop out of this for a second and go over to the 2 papers, and I just want to run you through the instructions and the rubric. Okay, I'll do this one first. This is the information, observation, and analysis paper. It's got a real fancy title. But basically, you're going to watch the interview, and you're going to get your observation. Has everybody had a chance to get their observation? Almost everybody was? Not quite? Yes? Awesome, awesome. So hopefully, as soon as you're done with that, you'll feel comfortable. You can start working a little bit. Okay? So basically, 3 big sections to your paper. There'll be a section summarizing the interview. That doesn't mean you summarize it in one paragraph. It's a section. You don't have to have a section header. I wouldn't use section headers if you want to stay within the page limits. So you'll summarize the interview, pulling in course content where it seems appropriate. Okay? In interviewing Ellen, Ms. Ordell, she did a really nice job hitting on some things that I know hit on some of our course content. And obviously what I'm looking for you to do is make connections between what we did in class, what we read, things we've discussed, and what you heard coming from a real life teacher. Okay? Then, after that section, you're going to summarize your observation. Again, just kind of in general, what you saw, highlight specific points. Obviously, we're looking with regards to students with learning disabilities. You may be in a classroom where perhaps you saw students with other complicating disabilities, maybe Down syndrome or other issues. Try to focus on students with learning disabilities because that's what this section of our class is about. Again, weaving that course content knowledge in. Okay? Then you get to the big part of your paper, which is worth the most points, is that summary analysis. Taking what you heard in an interview, taking what you saw in observation, and what you know from class content, and putting it all together. Okay? For a picture of what you see as being, this is how a resource room looks like in actual practice, this is what the work of the teacher's like, this is This is what I see happening with kids, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? You're going to be writing this from the third person's perspective, not I. Okay? I saw this, I heard this, no. Ms. Ordle said blah, blah, blah. In the classroom, students did blah, blah, blah. Okay? If you do a few I observed here or there, that's okay. But for the most part, I really would like it to be proper APA stuff, right? Obviously, always expecting you to just edit your papers carefully, spelling errors, make sure it's APA, that kind of thing. Okay? Now, the interview does not appear in your reference list, okay? Because that, well, no, actually, I'm going to take that back. Because it's not an in-person communication, it will appear in your references. Okay? So you'll have to list Ordle, comma, E, period, 2019 in parentheses, period, interview, and then downloaded from blah, blah, blah. Okay? So you'll cite the interview in your paper. Observation, if you had a conversation with one of the teachers while you were there, that's a personal communication. That doesn't go in your list of references. You use an if text citation that says, let's say it was me, powers, comma, personal communication, okay. Questions on that? If and when you use the text, because you're likely to do that, or lectures, you know how to cite all those because they've been listed previously under other references. So you can just look that up. Okay? I am expecting you'll have some of that stuff in there. So again, 3 main sections: interview, observation, summary, analysis. Basically, just want you to put it all together at the end. Okay.
The only part that I'm confused about is, when we summarize our interview and summarize the observation, do you want us to compare and contrast those two things, or?
No. This is what I heard in interview. This is what I saw in observation, okay. And then the summary is where you kind of put it all together.
So, like the all together of what is the correct way?
No. You're not doing an analysis of they're doing it right or they're doing it wrong. You're saying this is what I saw and heard, both in interview and in observation. There you can compare and contrast. You can say, she talked about how complex it is to get to know parents, but in my observation site, I saw a parent coming in and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you could do something like that.
So my other question is, do you want us to be repetitive, or can we put other things and then when we compare and contrast, do that there and don't say it in the other two parts?
If you need to refer back to it, you're probably going to want it there and say, as noted in the interview, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not supposed to be super complex. It's just really drawing a picture. Okay? This is what I heard from interview. This is what I saw in observation. This reminded me of this. We talked about this. You can pull things in, about peer relationships, inclusion, collaboration. There's lots and lots of topics you could hit on throughout the whole paper. You don't have to go super deep. I mean, it's like, what do we know about collaboration? Collaboration is hard. It's between professionals. It's necessary for effective special education instruction. And you could say, I saw, as, in observation, evidence of teachers collaborating was seen, blah, blah, blah. This is important, blah, blah, blah. Cite a lecture. So you just have to be thinking about what are all the topics that we covered, and did I see anything that connects? Looking for those connections. If you're struggling and you're like, I don't know what content this relates to, send it to me. I'll take a look at it. I'll try to suggest some things for you. But just kind of think of some of those themes that we've been through: inclusion, collaboration, appropriate instructional practices. What we're going to go through today may also strike a nerve. Talking about motivating students, self-esteem, variables we can control in the classroom, time, how we design our classroom. We'll talk about language today. We'll talk about zone of proximal development. Any of those would be great things to pull in your paper. Okay? All right. And again, as always, I'm happy to look at your paper. If you want me to give you a quick, this is how it's looking for me. All right. Don't forget, there's your template. Yeah. I do provide for you a little idea of how to open your paper. You don't have to do it exactly the way I'm suggesting. You can see if you download this, you'll have everything. Okay, you're running ahead, put your title in there. There's a page number, put your information in there. And then here, you're going to do some sort of an intro, right, before you jump into your interview. So you're going to say, special education has many facets, blah, 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 blah. In this paper, I will share an interview I listened to, an observation I attended, and provide a summary of my thoughts on blah, blah, blah. Okay? So some sort of an introduction. Then you can see interview, observation, putting it all together, and then finally at the end, some sort of a concluding paragraph. Okay? You don't have to be like, this changed the course of my life, and now, you don't have to be super direct. You can just say something simple to bring it to a nice, satisfactory conclusion. Okay? I'm not expecting this to be life-altering for you. If it is, great. If it isn't, you don't have to say something like that.
Can the summary be the concluding paragraph then?
No.
No? Okay.
No. The summary is worth 40 points. And so it should be fairly comprehensive, pulling all these different things together. You may even want to outline it a little bit and go, I want to take this I heard in an interview and this I saw in observation and connect it to this course content, boom, down here. Okay? That's going to make it your most comprehensive paper. And then at the end is, it's kind of a, thanks for reading my paper kind of conclusion. Okay. It's light, it's friendly, just wrapping it up. It's that period at the end of the sentence that sends us on our way. Okay. So in conclusion, this paper provided to you, blah, 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 blah. Again, this is not the Magna Carta, it's not the Declaration of Independence. You don't have to kill yourself around, what am I going to put in my introduction? What am I going to put in my conclusion? Don't have to be that complex. I'm pretty sure most of you are at that point in the semester, you're like, yeah, you're not getting that. It's just going to be like, here's what my paper is, okay? And that's fine. What I'm really interested in, as you can see, because there isn't actually points attached to the introduction and the summary and the concluding paragraph, there isn't. I'm expecting them to be there because it makes the paper read better. That's going to be in the conventionally correct kind of section. But both of the points are around the interview, the observation, and then your summary analysis. Good. All right. As always, you can send it to me. Even Sunday night before it's due, you can send it to me. I may or may not get it looked at, depending on how late you send it to me on a Sunday night, but I will try. It's due Monday at midnight. Okay. All right, very good. Let's talk for a moment about, yes, thank you. What is it? Okay, and then the other is your article summary. This one, remember, is just on one article. And I give you a template, and your citation happens at the top of the paper. So you don't have to have a reference page, okay, which is super nice. You're going to use section headers if you want, but you don't have to. I don't recommend using them because it'll make you go over the pace on it. Okay? Again, you don't have to provide in-text citations because we know you're talking about the same article. Now, it is proper APA format to say, Margulies et al., parentheses, date of the paper, stated blah, 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 right? Okay, so reference the author's name throughout. You only need to provide, in parentheses, in-text citation page number if you're directly citing the article. Okay? You probably don't want to directly cite the article because you don't honestly have room for it if you're going to answer all these questions. Because when you pull a direct quote in, it's kind of a beast. It sucks up a lot of your page width and length to meet your requirements. And it's just better writing just to synthesize rather than always using direct quotation. Okay? So, everybody okay on, you reference the article's authors, you use the year it was written, you only need a page number as an in-text citation if you're doing a direct quote. Okay? Now, I'm not going to be, you don't have to use here all the time, but you should, if you're talking about the authors, just use their names. Or you can say, they said blah, 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 they found blah, 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 because we know who they is, right? You don't have to tell us. So you might start your paragraph by saying something about, in their research, Fuchs and Fuchs found blah, 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 blah. They said blah, blah, blah. Next, they found blah, blah, blah. You don't have to keep repeating Fuchs and Fuchs. I'm just trying to encourage you to write a paper that's readable. So you should occasionally reference the author's name. You can use they or he or whatever gender is appropriate for the author. Okay?
And how long is this?
I think it's 4 minutes. 3 pages. Really short. So this one really tasks you to get it in one cover page and then the 2 pages for your summary. Okay? There is actually adhere to page limits is one of your rubric requirements. So if you have to go over, try not to go over. If you have to go over, you're not going to get all points. Okay? Just know that. If you go over by a whole page, you're going to probably have less points for that one versus if you went over by a couple of lines. But most of the time, with some pretty concise editing, you can go in and you can steal some words here and there. Like instead of always repeating the author's name, use they or he. It's a lot shorter on your page. Take out words like that, extraneous adjectives, lengthy explanations of concepts. Because you are just summarizing the article. You're not trying to repeat the whole article back to us. Okay? So think of it like if I needed to give this to my friend and they don't get to read the article, but they need to know basically what the article is about, you're basically creating a Cliff's Notes or Spark Notes for somebody else. Okay? If you think about that, that may help you as you go through summarizing. All right? So I'm going to look at your dress study guide prompts. You included a closing statement of some kind. It's concise, easy to read, that you understand the concepts. If you have something in there that's inaccurate, that's not a good thing. So you want to be checking yourself. The AP format we've already kind of went through, and then just well organized and structured in terms of editing it for spelling, grammar, vocabulary, things like that. Okay. Now let me show you the template one last time. Actually, I'm gonna. Okay, I will show you. Okay, so there's the template. You can notice this time it doesn't even have a running head. Okay. If you happen to choose the Connor article, you're already 1/8 on your way because I've already started that for you. But basically, you put the citation right up here that I provide for you that is right on top of the prompts for each of the articles. So it's literally copy, paste, right? Now, here's all of them. You can see blue is what you grab and put at the top of your page. And then here's the prompts. And so if you can think about these kind of form the basis for some paragraphs. But there's a lot of information in these articles. So you're going to have to push it down. You may just be like hitting it once, get in, get out. You're not going to get to go real deep on certain things. Like you won't probably get to spend a lot of time on Fuchs and Fuchs theories of you can have 3 tiers, or you can have more tiers. Or it's like, no, just say, they recommend 3 tiers, move on. Okay? If you cannot get all the questions in, you probably need to at least hit on portions of them, okay? Because I'll be looking for some elements. Okay? Remember, you don't have to retell the article. You're just summarizing. If I don't have all the information, I go to the actual article. You're giving us the guts of it. Okay? So it's really a strong exercise in getting to the heart of what is the point of one particular article. Okay? All right. This one isn't due until after Thanksgiving. Bless you. Again, if you want, you can send it to me. I'll take a look at it. And I'm pretty good at like looking for places to shorten up your paper. So if you're like, I have 3 pages, how am I going to get this thing down? Send it to me. I'll be like, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. Yeah, don't worry. All right. So, it's going to be a little bit of circling back around with prior learning. I would like you to think about one of our theories of learning. I want you to think about the behavioral theory, A, B, C. Does everybody remember what A, B, and C were? Consequence. All right. All right, just for fun, we're going to watch a video. Tell me antecedents, behavior, consequence.
Very good. One ring. Good job. One ring. Sir. Sir. Oh my goodness. Sir. You got a problem. You got a big problem. Party. Good girl. Patient. Sir, I can hear you. I can hear you. Excuse me. Sir. Sir, you cannot leave. Sir. One. Yes. Party, bring it. Good job. One more.
All right. So, antecedent.
We'd be asking them to ring it once.
Bring it once. Behavior. Bring it. Consequence. Gets in tree. So who had the basics down? Dog one or dog two?
Hey guys, today we're going to show you how I brush Winnie out every evening.
This is dog videos. So first dog hasn't quite got it yet, right? Second dog, what was the dog's name? Cardi?
Cardi.
Cardi. Oh, it was like Cardi. Is on it. That dog is like, I know this, I can do it, and such control. So, the first dog. You will have kids like the first dog. I know it, I know the answer. Like, wait, raise your hand, and then I will call on you. At one point, she actually reinforced him. She gave him the kibble, even when he was like bang, 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 bang. The challenge is with what we understand about behavioral theory is if you inadvertently reinforce a behavior that you're trying to not have happen, you just made that behavior happen more. And so what we have basically happening is a differential reinforcement of alternate behaviors. He's ringing the bell, but he's just ringing it too much. So you have to do what she's doing, which is I'm reinforcing him one time, and then eventually the dog did kind of calm down a little bit and could do one sort of, and she gave him a little bit of reinforcement, but definitely a challenge when kids are at different places with skill sets. And a little bit of overlearning there. It's like, if I just keep ringing it, I'm gonna get lots of treats. And it's like, no, one. So you have to be very discreet about the expected behavior. It's not just ringing the bell, it's one time when I ask you to. And so, when you've done your basic psychology, you've all read about Pavlov's dog, and now I'm showing you videos of dogs. This behavior isn't all about, how we're similar to dogs in training. But astonishingly, many of the concepts that work very well for effective training with animals is actually really good behavioral theory stuff. So, all right. So back to instructional variables. We did Vygotsky's zone of proximal development on Monday, and we talked about how important it is to have it right in the zone, right? We talked about kind of the three little bears thing. Hard, not too easy, just right. All right. Then we also talked about classroom design and how important it is to think about how can I get the most bang for my buck out of my room, because it's one of those things you can control, right? Remember the very important quote from that fabulous philosopher, Michelle Powers, who said, control what you can control, right? This is definitely one of those things you can control, for sure. You may not have control over what your desk looks like, what your chairs look like, how big your room is, but you can control how the room is designed, how it's set up. Limiting distractions, using space effectively. All right? We talked about developmental theory a little bit. talked about its relationship to how we structure time. We expect more from older individuals in order to be able to attend. We expect less from younger individuals in terms of being able to attend. But complicating factors, individuals with disabilities, their processing speeds, their attention deficit disorders that they may potentially have, other complications of sensory processing needs, all impact time. And again, time is a variable you control in a therapy setting, in a classroom setting. Okay? How long are you going to go? How are you going to chunk things up? Breaking things up into those small parts for understanding, right? And you probably already naturally do this. I mean, when you look at a chapter, you don't go, well, I'm going to sit here and digest this whole chapter right now. Okay? You maybe will outline it first, or look at some important vocabulary before you start it on a chapter, or you'll skim it first, and then you'll be like, okay, what do I think this chapter is about, and how much do I want to read right now, and then take some notes on it. Okay? Somehow you do that. When you go to study, you probably chunk it. You don't try to study the entire study guide. You're like, okay, I'm going to take these first 3 and do these, right? So we can also play around with the order and choice of activities, especially in a therapy setting, especially in a special education classroom. You do have a lot of control over saying, you know, math is a harder subject for a student, so I'm going to sandwich that with something a little easier that they really want to do. And so we'll do the hard thing, then we'll do the easy thing, then maybe we'll go back to the hard thing. Or it'll be do this hard activity, and then we will take a break, and you will have a choice to do something super fun, and then we'll come back to things that are hard. Just that back and forth so that individuals don't have to maintain that constant state of following through really hard information or really hard tasks. Providing breaks is another thing you can do. It doesn't mean we have to, like, everybody gets up and relax. It can be a literally 1 minute, you know, wiggle movement at your space, you know, just to give everybody that mental break. And most people benefit from that. All right. This is one we didn't get to on Monday. This is instructional variables of language. Okay? As the teacher, as the therapist, you want to be sure you're at the student's level for understanding. And there are certainly times when you've been in lectures, or you've just been, somehow you ended up in a conversation where people are talking about things and using terms that you're like, I'm so lost. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what this term is. Maybe you didn't get the reading done before you had to go to your chem class. And they're talking about stuff that you're like, nope, don't know it. And so your students are going to be like that. You have to be thinking about where's your language at in terms of the complexity of your vocabulary. My biggest sin sometimes is how fast I talk. I know that's a problem for some students because they're like, what did you just say? And I didn't stop. I just kept going. And so it's something I try to work on. It's something you all would be thinking about as well for delivering instruction is what's the pace that I need to present this at? Do I share a topic? Then do we spend some time on it? We go back, we review it. How do you approach it? We do consider what are the essential words that we're trying to hit on. When you're trying to explain a concept or teach a skill, you're going to have some real critical terms or words. And those are the things that we can pair with visuals that make them, again, more stickable. They go into long-term memory a little bit better. Remember semantic versus episodic memory? If I can pair those two, it's really powerful. Not just that I know what the scientific method is, but maybe we watched a video on it, or we practiced it in class, or we played, we took on role playing. We were Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and we were doing the scientific method in a play. That kind of pairing, both semantic terminology and then episodic and experience, can be really powerful for getting it into long-term memory and then also being able to pull it back out again. Remember when we played Sherlock Holmes? Oh yeah, I remember that. What were we doing? Oh, we were learning about how you investigate a theory. Boom. Okay? So visuals, really, really important for our students with learning disabilities. Creative language I just talked about. Again, my worst instructional problem is my pace. Because I'm like, blah, 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 I have so much stuff I want to get through. So you want to be sure that your students are following along. In the Midwest, we do have a pretty fast rate of speech. So it's just something we think about.
because again, students have different processing speeds. So vocabulary, pacing, use visuals. Yep, and you're always going to have that variety of students in a larger group. Even in a group of 5 or 6, we have a spectrum of where everybody's at. And so it's being cognizant of where your students are at in terms of understanding. You have some students that are like, yep, I'm with you 100%, and other students who aren't. And so you be sure when you're going through concepts that you're providing the explicit instruction to make sure that everybody's on board. There's a component of explicit instruction that says, I'm going to do something, and then we're going to do it together. And I'm assessing you the whole time to make sure that everybody is on board with whatever we're working on. And in these kind of specialized settings for students with disabilities, that's what you want to be sure is happening. In a regular classroom, that doesn't always happen. And so we hope that general educators think about these kind of variables and how they can make sure that everybody's on board. And I know they do. I mean, general educators definitely are thinking about where are all my students at. We do more work in smaller settings and specialized settings around explicit instruction where we're making sure everybody's on board. But I think that's key, is to stop and check for understanding from everybody. Like some teachers use little hand signals. Tell me with your hands, is it a 1 or a 2? And if you see 2s and most everybody's getting it correct, well, then you can just target to who didn't get it correct. Or we use whiteboards that I write on and I just show it to you. I don't show it to my friends. And now I can assess how everybody's doing. But that's why that progress monitoring, we did that clinical teaching wheel on Monday. That is a big part of that ongoing day-to-day progress monitoring, making sure that students aren't falling behind, aren't pretending they understand, and then they're not. So I think that's kind of to the art of teaching, quite honestly. That's the question that I think that takes me to is not only that you're supposed to monitor for progress, but that once you have, you do something with it. I think it is really an artful approach to learning. So that's a great question. And I've talked about this quite a lot. I think I sprinkle it into most of my conversations when we talk about students and special education needs, is how students with disabilities feel as they navigate through their learning day. And one of the things I really encourage educators to think about is if school was your job and you had to come every day, would you want to keep that job? Would you want to keep coming back? And I know I used this example on Monday, but if I'm not doing well and I'm told I'm not doing well on the job, pretty much every hour on the hour, maybe I'm getting held back from doing the things I like to do that are fun because I didn't do the thing that I'm not very good at. I didn't do that well enough. So I'm missing out on the things I'm good at or that I like to do things that I'm not good at. Pretty soon I'm going to develop a feeling about school as a place where I am not super successful and I probably don't want to be here very much. And so I think it's our job as educators in the early onset of having kids in school to make sure their experiences are not easy for them, but are supported so that they understand that missing problems on a homework sheet or on a test is okay and it's expected. You're supposed to practice, make mistakes, and learn from your mistakes. We rarely learn from things that come easy to us. We always learn when something is hard. And the lesson can be, it's hard, I don't want to do it, or it's hard, I haven't got it yet, but if I keep working at it, I can get it. And that, again, I think that's the art of teaching in some ways, is making sure the kids come back every day and are risk takers and knowing it's okay. This classroom, you make mistakes. And no one who makes mistakes is ever supposed to feel like they failed. It's just, okay, that's something we're going to spend more time on. We'll work on it some more. And you hear me all the time. My philosophy is, there was a question on the quiz and it was like, okay, that wasn't quite what I was looking for, but I didn't word it the way I thought I probably should have, or I didn't do a good enough job explaining to you. I didn't beat myself up. It's like, well, next time I just have to be sure I hit those terms better for you, right? So it's always trying to communicate that mistakes, challenges, things that come hard are what we're looking for. If it's easy for you, that's great, but that's not where the learning happens. That's not where you put on the brain power. So So we do think a lot about student self-esteem and the impact of failure. I really hate the snowflake term that people throw around, especially with your generation and how people think that, oh, you can't say anything bad. It's like, I think there's a huge difference between being empathetic and, going so far as to not allow anybody to experience something hard. To me, there's that balance. We can be empathetic, but that's just considering, how hard it is to have something be hard for you, and to help people be okay with that. I mean, if somebody said to me, it's okay that you're not that great at math right now. If you, put a little more time here with me, let's see if we can't get you where you want to be. I can remember those times when I succeeded on something that was really hard. It was very impactful. I carried it with me. And I don't know if that happens enough for some of our students in special education. Motivation is another concept. We talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is the bell and the kibble. Bing, food, bing, food. I am highly motivated by food. That is extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation are the things that we bring to the party. They're the things that make us want to do the work. This job for me is very intrinsically motivating. It does not bother me to read your paper at 10 o'clock at night. It does not bother me to work on my lectures until midnight because I love this work. This work is extremely intrinsically motivating to me. I have had jobs that I'm like, holy crap, I'm still doing this at 10 o'clock. I am so tired of this stuff. I just don't want to do this anymore. It wasn't intrinsically motivating to me. I am confident each of you has something that intrinsically motivates you, and you're like, I can spend hours doing this. And it's not like any time's passable. There's other things, it's like, damn, I need a cookie. I don't want to do this. I need something. Most of the time in our world, you're working with, I need a cookie. Your students aren't necessarily going to be extrinsically motivated to come in and do something really freaking hard. If somebody said, hey, you got to get out in that parking lot and change a flat tire, I'd be like, is there anything else I can do? Anything? Anybody? Because I'm not motivated to do that whatsoever. So it's like, well, I'll give you $10,000 if you change that tire. Oh, I'll get out there. I can do it. Yep, I'm on it. So you have to remember, what motivates one is not the same as the other. Right? Things that you find your friends doing that you're like, ugh. People that train for triathlons. My sister-in-law. I'm like, she loves it. It's very motivating to her. So, all right, different forces of motivation. Your text talks about this. I really think it's very important that we understand the things that are forces behind motivation. Some of these should be very familiar to you. The need to have friends. That's critical. That's why we spent time talking about social confidence and helping individuals be included, because you're not going to make friends if you're not included and if you don't have skills of social confidence. The need for independence. We talked about self-determination, tools that we provide that help individuals with disabilities to be more independent. They need to be important. I miss when a couple of kids aren't in our class. They're important to our class. Everybody contributes to our class. And if you didn't feel important, you'd be like, why do I even show up? Maybe you've been in a class with 300 people and you're like, nobody will notice. It's like, it doesn't mean we don't want you there, but maybe you just don't feel like it's important that you were there. Or it's an activity that when you go to, nobody seems to want to use your talents. And it's like, well, I don't think I'll go back. I didn't really feel like I was needed. The need to know, that's critical for us all. Why? Why is this something I have to understand? Why do I need to, do this activity at this time? Have you ever been asked to do something and you're like, why am I doing this? And there may be a really good reason behind it, but you don't know it. You weren't on a need to know basis. Practicing those god-awful safety drills. In some way, we have to help children understand, you need to know that sometimes we worry that we won't be safe at school. And so we do these drills so we can be safe, right? They need to know that. Not just, well, it's something we have to do. We have to go hide in a corner? That seems odd. The need to assert, that's that choice. I can do this right now, but I don't want to. There's sometimes in school settings, in therapy settings, it's like, yeah, you don't really have a choice. right? But you try still to embed ways for an individual to assert that. Any place you can, just as simple as you're doing something therapeutically with someone and they have to draw something. It's like, well, what color would you like to work in today? Pink or red? They're still going to do the activity, but you gave them some choice, right? The ability to assert their own self. The need for control. Sometimes that can also be very choice embedded. Where do you sit in the classroom? If you've been in classes where everybody's like, well, we're alphabetized, it's like, well, I don't like to sit up front. I like to sit in the back. Choice is critical, often, for motivation. They need to be recognized. Thank you so much for offering that idea. That's a pretty simple thing you can do. In a classroom, invisibility. I've been in classrooms where I've been invisible. Don't feel like I really need to be there. You've probably seen videos or maybe heard people talk about teachers that make an effort to recognize students. There was one teacher that has a really nice approach at the end of the week. Students write down on a piece of paper, turn in, who do you want to sit with next week for this project? And so they turn them all into her, and she reads all of them, and she reads for the kids whose names don't appear as somebody they want to sit by, because they're not being recognized, and they don't have potentially that importance or friendship thing happening. And so she's attending to who are those kids that were getting missed as kids that are of value and we want to be by them. And then that also affiliation and belonging to a group. Perhaps you've had that experience of being disjointed. You're out somewhere with a group of people and you're like, oh, this is not my group. I don't feel comfortable here. Or you do find your group and you're like, dang, where have you people been all my life? This is really fun. We look for those things. Children look for those things. They look for acceptance. They look for people who have similar viewpoints and want to do kind of the same things. This is why some kids gravitate to individuals who maybe aren't the best relationship-wise for them, because they'll accept them in a group. Right? So we have to help students make really strong choices about who do you want to affiliate with? What group do you want to call your own? Everybody needs that belongingness. I just like this. It's so right. But I mean, really, this, Maslow's hierarchy. But we've gotten to this point in our life where the battery and the Wi-Fi are pretty important. Actually, yesterday, my phone finally decided that it would force me to do an update that I've just kind of been ignoring. And so I went to do it, and then my Mac forced me to do an update because I had been ignoring it. So I couldn't update my phone or my Mac. And so I was sitting there with a black phone and a black screen and all this student work to do it. And I'm like, it took me an hour. But it forced me. And it was like, okay, basic needs. I'm like, what am I going to do without my phone? All right. So when you go to build rapport with your students, it's important. I think nobody gets in this field without being compassionate. That compassion can be trickled away from you. You can become hardened. You can become cynical. So it's a tool you have to nurture, is that constant compassion. Even when you don't feel super compassionate. Working with a kid that doesn't make you feel warm and fuzzy. You have to still reach deep for it. Having that understanding, why are they having a bad day? Maybe we don't know why they're having a bad day, but I understand it's just a bad day. Okay, we got to go with it. And having that genuine concern. Never just being the voice of saying, oh, well, I hope you have a great day. No, really mean it. Really mean it. The new Tom Hanks movie is coming out with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I grew up with Mr. Rogers. That's how old I am. But he's having a resurgence right now. One of the things that the actor talked about was they were doing a scene where they were talking about him thanking someone for something. And the director on the first day said, okay, let's do that again. This time you really, you need to thank him. And the actor said, well, I did. He's like, no, you need to thank him. And that spoke to the genuineness of what he was looking for. Kids are BS detectors. They knew right away when you are phony, when you don't mean it. You have to be real. And it's that relationship building. You don't get it right away. I mean, the way we relate, we didn't have that on the first day. We had to get to know one another. You had to come and trust me. I had to get to know you, what's important to you. Hopefully I'm trusting you. It's a back and forth thing. And that's the way it is in every one of these kind of student-teacher relationships. You build that together. Students are going to tell you their learning needs. You're going to track their progress. They should track their progress, and they should collaborate with the teacher. Frequently I'll say, is this working for you? Is there something different I can do? I want your input. I did midterm evaluations because that's me collaborating with you to make sure I'm meeting your learning needs. And that can be complicated, but important. Students need to know how to learn in your settings. I talk a lot about routines. When you come into the classroom, you should always know how to learn. You have to teach it at the beginning of the year. This is our routine for getting your papers. This is our routine for raising your hand to go to the bathroom. This is our routine for hand washing, for going to lunch. You teach all those things. You also teach routines for math, reading, and science. And then, once you taught the routines, the content changes, the activities change, but the routine is there. The students always know what to do in return. Comfort, trust, they're motivated, they're like, I don't learn in your room. I feel comfortable in here. Expected behaviors are learned. These students will not automatically pick them up. They will need help knowing how to talk in the classroom, how to speak respectfully, what's the tone of voice, how loud is your voice, how soft is your voice. When do we interact with friends? When do we not? All of those kind of things you really have to teach. In my 336 classes, what we're spending time on right now is what routines would you teach at the beginning of the school year so you've got an effective classroom. Once you've taught those overlays, then you're free to fly because the kids know what to do and you know what to do. I will finish with this. One of the best things I ever saw, I had a young teacher. She was, I think, in her second year teaching. It was like 3-4 weeks in the school year. She called me on a Sunday night. She's like, I'm in the emergency room. Get my appendix out. I'm like, okay. I said, what do you need? I can be in your classroom tomorrow. Make sure you get organized. And she said, you don't have to do anything. The kids know what to do. And I'm like, okay. And I went in on Monday, and it was as if she wasn't even gone. The kids knew they did bell work. They went and got their papers. The sub had the lesson plan, and everything just rolled. And she was out for a week. Those kids did not miss one moment of instruction, because she had embedded those routines and had taught them early on in the beginning of the semester. You will save yourself so much grief if you can get routines embedded in the therapies, in your classrooms. All right, so that's pretty much it on this. We'll pick this up on Friday and wrap it up. We were going to go into the next chapter, chapter 7, which is ADHD and autism. So we'll spend time on that on Friday. Okay. All right, that's all I got. Have a good rest of the day. Can you reach around and hit that pause button? See it right there, the green one?
Yeah, all right.
So